live and start the recording in 3, 2, 1. Welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another amazing chat and learn with Power to Fly. My name's Meg. I'm part of Power to Fly's virtual hosting team, and I am so excited for today's event and to dive right in. So with that in mind, let's get started. One thing I want to flag to y'all, just some housekeeping reminders, best practices, that kind of thing. If you've joined an event with us previously, apologies, it's all a little probably old hat for you, but the one big thing to remember when you attend these events is that these events are all about you. They're about our attendees, our community members. We want to make sure that the time that you spend with Power to Fly is well worth it. So to that end, you are very much encouraged to participate. You can do that in a couple different ways. You can turn your cameras on if you'd like to share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely, but there's no pressure. Don't feel like you have to be Insta perfect. I'm rocking a 4-day messy bun. It's just back here instead of up here. So, you know, non-traditional workspaces, furry coworkers, child supervisors, all of that stuff is welcome and encouraged. We want to make sure that you can join us as you are. You will show up on the live recording if you do come off mute for whatever reason. So if you want to come off mute to ask a question or comment on something one of the speakers is saying, you are free to do that. Just know that if you do come off mute, you will show up on the live recording. So like I said, it's being recorded. If you are, if you are listening in and, Sharee or Miguel says something mind-blowing and you cannot wait to share it with a coworker or a friend or relative, do not stress. Don't feel like you have to take notes because we are recording this whole session. Now, everyone that registered, so whether or not you showed up, from the past, if you are just now rewatching this, everybody that registered is going to get an email in about 1 to 2 business days that'll have a link to where you can rewatch the recording on our website where it will be posted. If you can't wait that long because you got to share that mind-blowing, amazing tip, you don't have to. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. I'll share the link for that with you in the chat box in just a moment. But you can always head over to our YouTube channel. We are live streaming there currently, and we will be posting the video there. Usually they're posted around 5 to 15 minutes after the end of each session. So we are, so you can check out those various places to catch the recording. One thing I do want to highlight for you is that if you are have any kind of privacy concerns, you can still participate. You can add questions or comments into the group chat. You can also DM me if you would like your question asked, but you want to keep yourself anonymous. That's totally fine. And you can also, don't feel free to, like I said, come off mute and comment. Just make sure that as you are doing so, you're only unmuting if you're actively speaking. It helps maintain audio clarity on the call for everyone, prevent that horrible echoing, all of that. And do your best not to interrupt the speakers or another participant. Me, I get paid to fill the silence. So please feel free to interrupt me so that y'all can make the most of your time today with Sharee and Miguel. So like I did mention our YouTube channel, I'm going to, like I said, pop that link in the deck, or sorry, into the Zoom chat here. But one thing to remember is that you can go there for all kinds of really great things, but you can also follow us on various social media as well. So if you just subscribe to the YouTube channel I'll share, you can make sure you never miss out on chats like this, even if you don't get registered in time. You can always go back and rewatch them. If you want to follow us, we are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can always follow us there for more great resources. We share stuff from our blog. We share Meet the Recruiter videos, all kinds of cool stuff. So as we jump into the next slide here, I just want to highlight before we get any further in that obviously Procore is loaning us both Sharee and Miguel for the day or for the afternoon, and they are hiring. So I'm going to share the link for Procore for their company page in the chat right here. This is going to be where you can go. The link, if you follow that link, it'll look much like what you see in front of your screen right now. That is going to take you to Procore's company page on powertofly.com. It is where you can get more information about Procore. You can check out some of the events that they've participated in with us. So if you've got an interview with them coming up, you can kind of see what they've got going on recently, as well as check out events that they are planning to, events that are out in the future that you can register for. You can also obviously check out their open jobs. One thing I want to highlight here is that when you jump on this page, there's going to be a big pink button up here that says follow. I highly recommend you follow. It's gonna tell Procore that you are interested in working with them even before you fill out an application, but it's also going to keep you updated when Procore posts new roles. So if you are actively seeking and interested in Procore, even if you're going to apply, I recommend that you tick that box. It can't hurt you at all. I also recommend that you tick that box if you're interested in Procore, but maybe you don't see anything that really suits you right this minute. That's a great way to make sure that they stay on your radar and you stay on their radar. So please feel free to check that out on powertofly.com. Now, to introduce you to our speakers who have been name dropping a little bit as we go. So Sharee Rico is Senior Manager of Business Recruiting and has been with Procore for 4.5 years. She's held several positions on Procore's talent acquisition team, including Customer Success Recruiter, Talent Acquisition Operations Manager, and Manager of High Volume Recruiting. Sharee's goal wasn't always to become a recruitment leader. She initially went to school to pursue a career as a probation officer, which I find fascinating. So I can't wait to hopefully talk to you about that later days. But she also took her first position as a recruiter for a third-party call center and knew her career was then taking a different path. As she worked at companies like Harbor Freight and Mindbody, Sharee helped grow the businesses from 350 to over 1,500 employees and through an IPO as well. Sharee's diverse experience and background have greatly contributed to her career success today, and we can't wait to learn some more about your journey. So thank you, Sharee. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this before we introduce your partner in this?
No, that was good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Miguel Poblete is the Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Program Manager at Procore. I love that acronym, DIBS, that's so great. Miguel focuses on building an equitable world in construction where everyone belongs. Miguel specializes in the training and development, leading global employee resource group ecosystem, which must be quite detailed, as well as partnering with the revenue organization at Procore. His goal is to bring empathy, humor, and energy to every project and training he's involved in. Miguel has worked in the technology and entrepreneurship space for over a decade and has been with Procore for 6 years. Miguel lives in Santa Barbara, California, with his fiancee Megan and mini Australian Shepherd Lily. I'll bet she's adorable, on both counts, I should say. And he enjoys making music, playing, and watching almost every sport, spending outdoors camping, hiking, or swimming. So Miguel, I'm super excited to get that glimpse into your career as well as your life. Do you have anything else you'd like to share before we jump into the questions?
Just hey, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We're so happy to be on this chat with some great Procore team members today. So before we jump in with the questions, I just want to highlight some of the principal themes that we're going to try and cover in today's conversation. Now, we put these together based on conversations with our speakers, as well as by reviewing the questions that y'all submitted ahead of today's event when you registered. That being said, we are all about you all getting the bang for your buck. So as you come in, if you have questions, if there's a reply from one of the speakers that you want to dig in deeper on, or you'd like more information, please feel free to ask. Let us know. You can come off mute. You can put questions in the chat or comments or whatever. You can also put them in a DM to me. We're going to try and touch on these, but just know that you can drive today's conversation. So if you asked a question and you're not sure if we're going to get to it and you want to make sure you get an answer, please feel free to ask it. If you submitted a question, we go over your question, but we're not maybe catching it just right or taking it at the right angle, please feel free to give us more context. You can come off mute. You can put it in the chat, however you'd like. But like I said, we're going to try and cover these topics that you see in front of you, some strategies to help choose your next career steps to help align them with your talent as well as your desires. We're going to talk about ways you can identify transferable skills. Sorry, all the dogs are locked out in the hallway, but they're barking at something. So that's why you'll see me going on mute a lot, so no one has to listen to that. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can identify some of your transferable skills to see where you might be able to shift roles, as well as some ways to communicate and build key relationships for that career movement and momentum. So as we dive in, like I said, please feel free to comment, ask questions. We're really excited to hear from you. So let's dive into this first question. We got this a lot. And a lot of people, I feel like this is a pretty common question to have. What do you feel is the most common pitfall when attempting to take charge of your career? Whichever of you would like to jump on this first, please feel free.
I can. I actually really liked that question. I honestly think for myself, it was like you're not honest with yourself, right? Like you might have gotten something that you're super excited about, maybe the pay or the people you're going to work with, but you didn't truly think about like the job and what you're going to be doing every day. So I think people think about all the perks and greatness of it, but really don't think about, am I going to be happy doing this every day? So I think that's one of the pitfalls that comes up.
That's a good point. I think you're right. I feel like people kind of focus on like, I need a job, and then they think that's the job.
Yeah.
And I know that I've definitely fallen prey to this because any port in a storm sometimes. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. Miguel, what do you feel about this?
So two thoughts come to mind. One is around management being the only way to accelerate and grow your career. I think that's a common pitfall that people think, all right, I'm here and, I want to grow my career. I'd like to make more money. I'd like to have more responsibility. So I've got to become a people leader. That's my path towards success. And so I need to manage. And I think it's a very common pitfall. And there's a lot of folks who take that route. And then a couple of years down the line say, shoot, I don't think this is for me. This is being a people leader isn't for everyone. And I think that at more mature companies, there's more avenues to growth and to success and being able to still increase your pay and your responsibilities while staying as an individual contributor. So, what we call here an IC manager or an IC director even. I think that's a very common pitfall, is thinking that you need to put people underneath you in order to move up the ladder or progress your career. And the other thing that I would say is trying to force a promotion, maybe when there isn't all the buy-in that's needed, right? A lot of career mobility is about social dynamics, corporate politics, if you want to call it that at times. And some folks I've seen sort of strong arm their way into a promotion and push it through without consensus or without a lot of buy-in. And those tend to be on shaky foundations or shaky ground to begin with. That can be a common pitfall as well.
I especially love that point about leadership being like kind of that key to advancement. I feel like it occupies much the same like space and carries the same weight as people saying, well, you have to go to college, you have to get a degree, or you won't get a high paying job, blah, blah, blah. And I think you're right. It's one of those things that, yeah, it can definitely help, but it's also not necessarily for everyone. Not everyone's going to be happy in a leadership position. And so, not that it can't be learned, it absolutely can, but there's just, some people that really don't want to do it, or maybe aren't quite sure what it entails, but think it's just that next step. And it kind of goes to what Sharee is talking about, right? Like, looking at something to see if you actually are going to have the bandwidth or have the skills or the ability to do this, as well you can. So I love that.
Yeah. Sometimes the person who's best at the role on the team isn't the person best suited to lead that team, and vice versa. Maybe you're not the top-notch player, but you're a great people manager. I think thinking about it more holistically is important. Yeah,
for sure. Okay. So moving on to another question that we were asked a lot here. Hold on here. Sorry, I moved to the wrong slide. So we talked, there's a lot of information in the registration page for this event. And a lot of it talks about kind of defining your purpose. How do you define a purpose of someone's, like, as it relates to your working career? Like, is your purpose really like different when it comes to personal versus professional? Or is your purpose, when it comes to just your professional career, should that also take into account, some of the things and goals that you have in your personal life?
Sharee, you want me to take this one?
You can start this one first.
Okay. So I think there was two questions in there. One was, should you take into consideration your personal values, your personal purpose into your career trajectory and the work that you're doing? And obviously that's going to be personal for everyone, but for me, yeah, for sure. I think that I want to make sure that the time that I'm spending and what I'm doing and what I'm getting paid for aligns with things that I care about and things that I'm passionate about, things that make me feel fulfilled and make me feel like I'm on the right path in my life outside of just my career. So for me, I'd say the answer to that is yes. So the first part of it, right, is getting clarity on on what matters to you, what you value. But then specifically as it pertains to professional purpose, what's been really beneficial for me is a framework that comes from the Marcus Buckingham Company, which is sort of an evolution of StrengthsFinder that from Clifton that probably a lot of folks are familiar with. And they provide an assessment. It's called the Standout Assessment. And the gist of it is learning less about what's your strengths and learning more about what energizes you, what really lights you up, what is the kind of work, the kind of human interactions and tasks that you do that you know are really exciting to you, whether you're good at them or not good at them. It might be that you actually don't have a high degree of skill, but it's a strength of yours because you look forward to it. You feel amazing after you do it. And then on the other side of the equation, your weaknesses are not based on your skill either. Your weaknesses might just be things that take the life out of you. So you might be really good at spreadsheets. You might be really good at something that you actually totally dread and you procrastinate on and you feel totally drained afterwards. Doesn't matter how good you are at it. That's a weakness as well. So I think for me, that was really transformative, getting more clarity on that. It's easy to do. You can just take a piece of paper and put a line down the middle and say, what energizes me and what de-energizes me? And then get clarity on, okay, well, what's the kind of work that would allow me to spend at least 70% of my time in this energized bucket, whether you're good at it or not? Because the research shows that if you care about something and you're excited about something, you will get good at it, because it's just that much, your brain is that much more compelled to develop more skill in it. So I think that when I think of purpose, I think of that. What energizes you, and how can you start learning what are the kinds of jobs out there that have a 70% of that on the right side of the ratio. You're never going to get to 100. So a 70-30 ratio is healthy. That's how I think about professional purpose.
I think that's great. And I really love how you talk about it in terms of like what energizes you versus what doesn't. Because I feel like when people are thinking about strengths and weaknesses, you're more thinking about like outward results, right? You're usually thinking of like, okay, what can I do? What am I good at? What am I bringing to the table? And less about like, how does this make you feel? Because like, there's a lot of things I'm good at I really don't like to do, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they're all kind of energy sucking for me. So I really love that reframing. Thank you so much for that. Cause I sit through, I can't even tell you how many of these, and there's always at least one moment every chat that I get that kind of like light bulb, like, oh gosh, I've never heard it like that before. So thank you, Miguel, for that. That's lovely. I love it. Sharee, what do you kind of follow along with what Miguel says, or do you have a different take on it?
No, I actually plus one a lot of what he says. I love the energy thing. It's definitely something that I've recognized throughout my career. Even as a recruiter, most of it was high volume. And I realized one day that I was doing like 5 phone screens in a row. And by the 4th and 5th one, I wasn't even listening to the person anymore because I was exhausted from talking and listening and answering questions. So I had to really recognize like, okay, what do I need to change in my day so that the candidate's getting a great experience, they're getting a fair shot. So I never do more than 2 in a row. So I love that because that's definitely something that I've noticed throughout my career, like what is taking from me and making me super tired, or what is making me super excited and happy to get, to do. And then I definitely would consider like my personal life when I'm thinking about like my purpose and what I'm doing next, because there's just, me personally, like I'm a senior manager right now, but I do have a lot I could go on to do. Right. But am I ready to do that right now? I have 2 little ones at home. Do I want to take the chance of missing their t-ball games or whatever it might be? So I think personal definitely goes into your decisions on what you want to do next. So I agree with everything that Miguel said.
Awesome. All right. So Miguel, you had started to touch on this idea of frameworks. So I want to kind of circle back to that a little bit, especially with what Sharee had just said about, your future planning might include this idea of, okay, well, while my kids are small and want to be doing these things, or while I'm at this stage in my life or whatever, this is what I want to be doing. But then there might be a different stage where that you assume, or you can plan ahead and thinking like, well, my time will free up, or my priorities will be a little bit different than they are now. Are there any frameworks that you recommend using to keep yourself on track with career development, especially when parts of that might not, like you might have a change in focus or a change in pace that you anticipate along the duration of your career?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I highly encourage everyone, if you haven't, to develop what we call an IDP, an individual development plan. And for me, sort of the framework has been the pairing of that, what TMBC calls a love-loathe list. So that's what we were talking about just a second ago. What energizes you? What de-energizes you? What do you love? What do you loathe? Getting clarity on that, I think, then is a great springboard into developing an individual development plan. And so for me, the way that I've done it is I've sort of broken it out in terms of time and then in terms of different facets of my personal life. So and then I revisit it, right? Meg, to your point, things shift and life events happen, and maybe your priorities change or what's important to you, right? Sharee said that there's probably an opportunity to move from senior manager maybe into director, but that's a whole different ballgame and set of responsibilities, work-life balance or work-life integration. And if what's important to you is to spend time with your family, which is certainly important to me as well, sometimes you take that into consideration. And we have a lot of leaders at Procore who have been very open and honest about that, about when was the right time to really push for the next step, and when was a good time to feel like they were steady and could focus on other parts of their life as well, or uplift other parts. So for me, an IDP looks like, where do I want to be in 1 year? Where do I want to be in 3 years? Where do I want to be in 5 and 10 years? And then across 5 different categories. So where do I want to be across those sort of timelines professionally? Where do I want to be personally, financially, spiritually, and creatively? And what's the last one? I think it's more around like family and like, where do I want to be in the world? And intellectually. So for me, that helps me think about my life outside of just the work. And then it's a sort of a living, breathing document, a spreadsheet that I developed years ago, 5-6 years ago, and then I just revisit, where am I at? 18 months ago, I thought I was going to be on this career track, and it's totally different now, right? I've made a big shift. So let's recalibrate some stuff. Maybe the professional bucket looks different, but then being able to also celebrate and say, well, this is where I wanted to be a year ago, and I'm there, right? From a creative perspective or from a personal perspective. So it gives you an opportunity to hold yourself accountable, to celebrate your wins, and also to course correct. Maybe when you said, oh, shoot, this was something that was really important to me, and maybe I need to invest a little bit more in this space to get to where I'm going. So that's how I've looked at it, as in terms of a framework.
The idea of that spreadsheet alone has got me like, yes, I love a good spreadsheet. It's the most ridiculous and boring thing, but I absolutely love one. So I'm going to take that advice for sure. Thank you for that. Sharee, what do you think on this? Do you have a different way that you track these goals of yours, or a different different method that you use to keep yourself on a career trajectory?
Mine's honestly the same. I didn't do it in a spreadsheet though, so I'm kind of jealous that I didn't, because I love spreadsheets.
Well, now everyone's just going to steal that idea.
Yeah, I'm stealing that for sure. But when Miguel was explaining it, I was going to like really just push. It is okay to revisit it. It is not set in stone. I mean, it's not just that it's okay. You should be revisiting it. Life changes at the drop of a hat, and it can change your path. It can change your personal path, work path, all of it. So I just can't stress enough that it's okay to go back. What I stated before is something that actually just popped up. Like, I'm just starting to think about, do I want to take those next steps? In the past, like probably a year or two ago, I'm like, yes, I want to do it all. I want to go, I want to be a VP. I want to be an SVP, but I just had to really sit back and say, okay, is this really is it the right time for this right now? Or should I wait a little bit? What's most important to me? So I think that's a great framework. That's what I use. It's just more in my mind instead of on a sheet, but I'm going to go spit it out on a sheet later.
I actually like both, especially since like sometimes this stuff can feel kind of weird to plan that much in advance. Look at the last 18 months. Nobody hopefully knew that this was coming. And so, yeah, it's definitely one of those things that there are no constants in life. And so what are you going to do? When it comes to, kind of developing those methods, are there any ways that you found more effective, and more like practical for planning these things, like, ways to like estimate how long it should take you? Do you refer to other sources on timing for these sorts of things? Is there anywhere else you're getting input or guidance other than, what you think you want to do, or, somebody you might be modeling your career after?
I definitely have people that I have been a part of my past. The third party call center that I ended up being a recruiter for, that VP is the one who put me on the recruiter path. And I still to this day call him and say, hey, this is what I got going on. Like, what's your guidance? Or, so I use my contacts to help me figure these out. And then whatever company you're at, I'd say, use your manager, use your leaders, ask questions, dig in. It's okay to do that. And it's going to help you, figure out what you want to do.
I like that.
Yeah.
Go right ahead, Miguel.
Same. Just finding mentors, right? Finding people in your sphere, maybe at the company you work at, maybe a company that you did work at, that you feel like have found that balance and feel lit up and feel energized, and maybe light you up, and reach out to them and get clarity on, hey, these are the moves I'm thinking about making. I'd love to get a better understanding of, should I be thinking about 1 to 3 years? Is this a 5 to 10 year thing? I think that bouncing off, for me, it's always made it real to just speak it into existence, right? To take it from that spreadsheet and then tell someone else, these are my goals, these are my intentions, these are my dreams and career aspirations. I think for me has always made it real and helps it be something that now I'm sharing with friends, family, mentors, etc. And then benchmarking, right? Maybe it's not someone but you want to go in a certain direction, and building out your network of sort of professionals in the space that you're in or the space that you want to be in, reaching out to people on LinkedIn, maybe even just stalking their LinkedIn and saying, how long did it take these folks to get to, where I want to be? I think building your network is really important.
I love that. We do have a question from the chat here. Cynthia is asking Sharee, as a mom or as a parent, how do you balance your career ambitions while raising a child and dealing with the pandemic? And I thought this was a good question, especially since, one of the things we talked about is kind of reacting and revisiting these plans, especially in light of changes or shifts that we didn't anticipate. We might have really been upset that happened. When you really have to have a shift and you didn't pick it, how do you kind of recover from that and maintain the balance that you want to have in your life when it comes to professional versus personal?
I was actually typing the answer, so thanks for asking. I want to preface it with that. I feel pretty lucky that I work for a company that is okay with work-life balance, and very supportive of it. So you definitely are. I think you are going to come across the companies that don't offer that balance. So I just want to preface this that I'm very lucky with Procore. But I'm just very open with my leadership and my team, right? So for example, I try and take my daughter to school every morning. So I put that on my calendar and I don't block it. I don't make it private. I show my team, hey, I'm taking Addie to gymnastics, or I'm dropping her off to school today. To not only show them that it's okay to do that when you have, kids or even parents that you're taking care of, whatever it is. So I'm just really open about it. And then as far as when everything shifted in the last 18 months, I was pretty lucky. My mom owns a daycare, so I could still kind of take my kids and I didn't have to have them at home the whole time. But that did shift on Sundays when she had to close because of, exposure or whatever it may have been. But like you said on this call, it's okay if kids pop up in the back. It's fine. I think it is becoming a way more accepted thing across the globe, because we don't really have a choice. People are at home and they have to, they have animals, they have kids, they have parents, they have, whatever, depending on them. So I just think being really open about it and talking to your, maybe your direct manager too, and just say, this is super important to me. I'm not going to give up taking my kid to school every day, and, but yeah, I would just say, be really open.
I really like that. And I'm not a parent, but I do something similar. I've got therapy that I do every 2 weeks, and it's an hour, and it's never really at a very convenient time during the day, but that's what's available. So that's what I do. And I make sure that I block that off. People know that that's what I'm doing. Cause like, I don't have any problem or, embarrassment or insecurity around that, which is great. And it's good that I really also like that what you said, the idea of being in a resourced or privileged place to be able to rely on your work to support that, to work, rely on your company or rely on your teammates, to respect that and respect what what you need and what you are able to do versus where your priorities lie. I think that's great. Miguel, have you had experience with this as well?
For sure. I think what I wanted to add to that is that when we talk about having the privilege of working at a company that supports that, it's not just a top-down thing, right? So you both are helping to lead the culture and evolve the culture in the direction that you want it to be for you and for other folks as well, right? So what you're both doing is destigmatizing something that maybe some people have no idea is okay or is acceptable. And so, we have a lot of ownership in where will the culture of the company go, and what kind of company do we ultimately want to work for? Maybe some folks don't feel, Meg, I'm the same way. I have therapy every single week. And it's something that is privately visible on my calendar. And I considered, do I make this private? And I thought, no, I want to be part of a solution, right? I want to be part of, if this inspires one other person to either change their therapy from private to public on their calendar, or say, hey, you know what? Maybe I can take an hour out of my work week to do this. It's tricky to engage with professionals when you're working a 9-to-5 job, right? It's hard to squeeze other things in. So I would mention that as well, that this isn't only about what the company provides to us, but also what do we provide to the company, to our coworkers, to our colleagues, to make it a healthier, more balanced culture where we feel like, all right, you can be more than just the work version of yourself during the work week.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of kind of trying to break down some of those like siloing that happens, or like the compartmentalizing that I feel like we all do, but there's certain times where that's helpful, and there's other times where it's like, no, that's leading to more problems either for me or for my team, because neither of us are really getting what we need here. There actually was a really great question in the chat asking about companies that might have used the pandemic as a way to either push women out of the workforce or stall out, or in some way kind of prevent either the success or the rise of women through the ranks. Now, it doesn't sound like that was what your experience was at Procore, but have either, please correct me if I'm wrong, but have either of you ever experienced something like this where you kind of felt like you weren't really being supported and you didn't know what to do next?
I actually did have that at one of my companies. I had actually just had my first child, and we had just opened. So our office was about 30 minutes away. And then we had just opened one in my town, so like 5 minutes from my house. And I had gone and asked them if I could work from that office a couple days a week. Mind you, I also was recruiting for that office specifically. So I thought it was like perfect, right? I can drive 30 minutes a couple days, and then I could be close the couple other days. And they were just like dead set against it. Nope, you need to drive in. Like no wiggle room at all. And I had to sit back and say, all right, I'm not okay with this. And that's actually when I made the switch to Procore. I just, it didn't make any sense to me. There was no support of like, okay, you have a new baby at home. You had to come back to work after 3 months, and so I, made that decision and started looking and came across Procore.
Is there a point that you really, because I feel like a lot of these questions, when they're framed like this, a lot of it is trying to identify what is a situation that there is a compromise. There should be able to work out a compromise, versus realizing when there's really not enough give and take, or you're not getting what you need, and so you need to look elsewhere. Was there like a specific moment that really signaled that for you, or is it something that you kind of just had to step back and look at the interaction as it was progressing and realize this isn't how this should be working?
I kind of had to look at the whole thing. That company, like, it had changed a lot in other aspects too. So it wasn't just that specific thing, but that was specific to me feeling supported as a new mom. And, you know, coming back to the workplace and supporting a team and doing what I did every day. But there was more that went into it. But I think that was like the last, like, okay, I really need to look at, am I happy here? Do I feel supported? Do I feel included? Do I, you know, all of those questions that you think of.
Yeah, I like that. Miguel, do you want to weigh in on this, or do you want to keep moving to our next question?
I just say it's a good opportunity to revisit that ratio, right? Did you find yourself all of a sudden in a situation where 80% of your job is de-energizing for you? And maybe it's partially the work that you do, but maybe it's also the lack of support you're getting from leadership, lack of career growth or mobility available to you. If you sit back and you say, oh, shoot, I have got this ratio all the way flipped around, and I'm spending 70% of my time feeling drained, feeling stressed, feeling exhausted, feeling like I'm procrastinating on stuff, dodging stuff, then what do you need to do to shift it? Is there another role within that company? Is it maybe time to look somewhere else? I think always just checking in with yourself is important.
I like that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that idea of the career ladder. I know that depending on the company, a lot of either smaller companies or sometimes companies just don't have one in place. But if there's not really a career ladder for your role within the org, should you look at creating one, or is that a situation where, you know, depending on what you find, maybe you should plan, you know, make sure that your plans include transferring to a different company, because that could be, you know, hugely impactful on the rest of your plan following. So how have you ever come up against this in the past, or have you ever seen this happen with other people?
For me personally, for sure, more than once in terms of, I think if, just to reiterate the question, it's what happens when you're in a spot and you realize there isn't really a formalized infrastructure for you to progress, and there isn't, well-documented competencies of what, you know, the evolution looks like, or a lot of that just comes down to HR type of stuff, right? Maybe your company isn't at that scale where every role has been leveled out and has clear, distinct roles and responsibilities or opportunities even. What do you do in that space? I think varies a lot. I think trying to partner with your HR organization and sharing, hey, you know, I really enjoy this work that I'm doing, and I don't feel like there's much of a path forward, or there's a lack of clarity as to what my path is. Can maybe prompt an opportunity for HR to say, oh yeah, we should focus on this area of the business, partner with your leadership and management, and see if we can build that out document that for you and show you what that path might look like. But sometimes you just do hit a ceiling. Sometimes you realize this is as far up this ladder as I can climb. And maybe it's just because of budget reasons, or it's a small team that is just not going to grow more. You've got leadership that's sort of holding that ceiling over you. But yeah, those have been situations I find myself in and have prompted me to start looking laterally, right? I think that's a big gist of what we're going to talk about, is the difference between upward mobility and lateral mobility, and how you can think about those things.
Okay, so within that same vein, how do you evaluate if changing companies is the best move for professional and career advancement? We talked a little bit about, you know, kind of working with the org to develop some sort of plan, but you know, whether it's been developed or whether it was already in place before you, how can you kind of, I mean, assuming that this is very personal to each person, but how can you assess if that company and if that particular path would be less helpful to you long term than maybe a different company would?
I think this is from the recruiter lens. I would stress that it is okay to ask questions, right? Like in an interview, a lot of people get super nervous. You feel like the company's the one interviewing you, but you're interviewing them just as much. And it is okay to ask, you know, questions around, you know, what would this look like in 5 years? Is there room to grow? Do you see this team getting bigger? Whatever it might be. It is okay to ask questions. If you are kind of back to, I think it's totally okay going, if it's a smaller company and you're kind of seeing a ceiling, go talk to your HR team. Like Miguel said, I think that's it. You don't know what you don't know. And they also don't know what they don't know. If you don't say what you're wanting, you can't expect them to move you up or help you if you haven't talked to them. I tell my team that all the time. I cannot help you if you don't talk to me. I'm not a mind reader, so be open with them. There's nothing wrong with going and talking. And if they come back and say, that's just not where the business is headed, you have to be okay with that too. You did your side and you tried for it. But then when you go start talking to other companies, be very open and say, like, I was looking for movement. I loved my last company, but it just wasn't there. So I want to make sure that my next steps, there's some sort of like ladder or career advancement for me.
I like that. And actually, so this really echoes a lot of the stuff that I've heard, but on a personal note, last week when we had our September mini summit, there were a couple of speakers that were actually really interesting that suggested not to ask about career advancement opportunities or ask about these kinds of things in an interview setting, for fear that it would set a tone that you're not really interested in the job you're getting. You're more interested in like the job 2 to 3 steps beyond where you are currently. Obviously, you can't speak for all recruiters, but personally, what is your opinion on this?
I think it's a fine line. I think you have to be really tactful at how you bring it up. And I think explaining why you're asking that question and saying, hey, I was with this company before, you can see that it's a smaller company. So this is why I'm asking. It's okay to have like a backstory to your question, but there is a fine line. I do agree. If you have someone coming, we have people coming in and asking, okay, well, when am I going to be an AE enterprise? But they're interviewing for an SDR. Well, that's going to be a while, so are you really going to truly be, but that's where, as a recruiter, I should say, this is what the role is you're going for. And this is about how long, you're going to be in it before you can try and move on. So really think about if this is what you want to do, or if you want to, try and go for something bigger. But it is a fine line. I think you just have to be very tactful.
Do you think it might be a little safer to ask about like mentorship opportunities or something?
That's a good way.
If there's like a career development program that's at large for people to join, as opposed to really focusing on like, I was just thinking like that might be a little bit easier of a way to phrase it without feeling like you have to know exactly the line that you want to deliver as you're going to do it. So yeah.
And
go ahead, Miguel.
Do you want to join a company that is going to frown on you having ambitions? Because there's a difference between, and you can, as a recruiter, you can sniff that out easily. Is there someone who wants to get the role, but very clearly has their eyes on that role over there? That's easy to spot. But if that's not you, if you genuinely are here to pay your dues and do the work, I think that the tact that you can, describe is, hey, I've been in this role now for 2 or 3 years. And I've had conversations with my leadership and with HR, and there's not really much of a path forward here. I've kind of hit my ceiling, and I'm really comfortable with paying my dues and learning and being coachable. And so, I'm asking this question in regards to what my maybe 3 to 5 year journey at this company would look like. That shows you that, hey, we're going to hire someone who wants to stick around. We're going to hire someone who can grow with us. And then you say, I'd like to understand, where is this team going? I think that shows that you've got, your future focus as well, and you've got some vision. And I think it's totally fair to interview the company and say, do you have this stuff built out? Do you have career mobility and career competencies and leveling set? Because you don't want to go to another spot that's going to be just like the one you're at right now. I think that's fair. And if that's frowned upon, then maybe that's not the spot for you. Obviously, you don't want to give the impression that you're looking for a quick 6-month turnaround, and then it's how do you get the heck out of there? Because that's not a good investment for a company.
Yeah. No, I like phrasing it like that, trying to talk about, well, in my last role, like I was there for 3 years. There's not really a path forward, blah, blah. I want to make sure that I'm finding a place that I can grow in, a place that is going to support me, that I can spend however long you want to try and estimate. I love that. I'm going to hand the mic over to my colleague Paloma. So she's going to take you through a couple more questions and then round out the hour. But I just want to say thank you, Miguel and Sharee. It's been lovely chatting with you.
Thank you, Meg. Good to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you, Meg, and hi, everyone. As Meg said, I'm Paloma from Power to Fly, and I would love to jump to the next question. So someone shared, I've taken a junior position to get into a mission-driven company that I love. I thought I would be happy, but I can't help feeling like it was a step backwards on my professional journey. So Sharee and Miguel, have you ever experienced something like this? Do you have any advice for this person?
I think it ties well into the question that we just answered, right? Which is, and the other side of it, to finish that last question, if you're applying for a company and you're applying for a job that you know you actually don't want, and what you want is the next step, maybe don't apply for that job, right? Maybe you're setting yourself up for failure if you know that you're going to have to pay your dues and you're going to be miserable doing it. So now if we look at this question, well, what does that ratio feel like to you? It sounds like you joined a company that's mission driven, that you love, and you felt like you would be happy. Well, are you, right? What's most important to you? Is it being part of that company? Is there an opportunity over time to grow into a less junior role? Or was it more specifically about the role at hand? I personally have taken steps that some people have seen as steps backwards. Maybe I've taken opportunities that in the short term limited my earning potential, right? I've taken roles where I was sort of on a fast track to management or a fast track to more pay, but it wasn't fulfilling me. So I chose to go elsewhere, to something that was going to energize me more and would put me on the path to ultimately where I've gotten. So yeah, I would again, I think a lot of this is a similar answer. Check in with yourself, right? What is most important to you? Is it the role at hand? Is it the company that you're a part of? And yeah, I think Aubrey's saying here, sometimes you have to take a step back to go forward. Yeah. And I think that everyone's perception of what's backwards and what's sideways is different. Sometimes you're not actually going backwards. You're just taking a step to the side.
I love that. And yes, and as you've been mentioning, the whole chat is about revisiting your spreadsheet. Where are you based? What's important for you? So Sharee, would you like to add anything over here?
No, it's the same. I was gonna say it goes back to checking in on that, plan that you set up for yourself. And just really being honest with yourself with what's more important, right? The company culture and you being happy as a whole, or your day-to-day in the actual role. And another thing, again, you took a junior position. Do you have the experience for, getting promoted? Talk to your manager about it. Be open with them. It goes back to, they can't help you if they don't know what you're thinking and feeling.
Interesting, thank you. And one of the aspects that you were mentioning when you create this spreadsheet was a financial aspect. And we have one question here that ties to that angle. So it says, how can I make a switch to a new department in our company without compromising my salary? And Miguel, I think you touched a bit this question in your previous answer. I don't know if you would like to elaborate something else.
Yeah, so there's two parts to that. Sometimes you're going to have to take a role that will genuinely ask you to take a pay cut. That hasn't been my personal experience. I haven't looked for roles, but I have, like I said, taken roles where it's been clear, hey, you're going from one department, a large department that's well funded, to a smaller department that maybe has less budget. So your ability to get larger raises, on an annual or even biannual basis, will be limited. So for me personally, I don't have experience with taking an actual pay cut. More so just knowing that I'm playing a long game here, and that eventually I'll get to the pay that I want. But in the early parts of my career, that wasn't my priority. So financial capital is one of many capitals that I think about and that I weigh. And my motto in the early parts of my career has always been that my career is about accumulating capital, but maybe not necessarily just financial capital. So what do I mean by that? Accumulating social capital, experiential capital, like networking capital, intellectual capital. There's political capital. There's all these other forms of that are not monetary, but that you can very much invest in yourself and then reinvest when the time is right. So I would check in with yourself. First and foremost, again, I feel like a broken record, but with the energizing thing, right? Are you taking a step backwards? Are you taking a more junior role? But are you feeling energized because you work for a great company that you love? Or maybe you're doing work that is getting closer and closer to the kind of work that you want to do. And then is there an opportunity to, down the line, reinvest that capital and say, hey, I love this work. I do feel like I'm a little underpaid. I've been in this role for a while, and I've now built the relationships, right? I've proven that I do great work. My leadership sees that. My leadership believes in me. They want to see me grow. They're rooting for me. I'm now an expert in this field. All of a sudden, you have all these other things that you have spent time and energy accumulating that are not monetary, but then ultimately get you to where you want to be. That's always how I've thought about it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Sharee, would you like to add anything?
No, yeah. I would say there's not really a specific way you can I can't really say, yeah, there's a way you can go say you don't want to lose your salary, right? Because it really depends on the business, the department you're switching to. Like Miguel said, you might be going from a very large department that has a lot more budget than to a smaller department, right? But I think going and talking to your HR person and saying, hey, I'm thinking about making this move in my career, and really weighing if it's okay to maybe take a step back on your salary for a little bit, knowing that there's some growth opportunity, then I think that's a way to do it. But I can't sit here and say that there's a way to do it without compromising your salary, because sometimes you might have to.
Amazing. Yeah, and it all comes back to what you were mentioning before, Sharee. You know, they won't know if you don't tell them. So having these conversations with the recruitment team, with your manager, expressing your fears. And another interesting question here is that, Miguel, you were talking about your capital. So the financial capital is not the only one. But what happens when the recruitment team doesn't feel that you have the intellectual capital or the experience for that position? Like, how can you overcome that situation? You're passionate about that job, but you don't have the experience that it's required. How can you either let them know that you're willing to learn, or how can you gather that experience on another path? So what would you recommend in this type of situation when people feel that you don't have the experience, but you're pretty sure that that's the perfect role for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So part of it is doing what you just mentioned, Paloma, which is, can you say, hey, I really want to learn, and I might not have the experiential or intellectual capital just yet, but I'm fast on my feet. You know, I'm very coachable. I learn quickly and I work hard, and ultimately, like, what's most important, you know, it will depend on the company, on the culture of that company, on the hiring manager. Some people need the expert and they need them right now. And some people need someone with grit and determination who will become the expert, but that can really be molded. So I think, yeah, being open about that. If you want a job and you're applying for that job and you're interviewing for that job, but you know that maybe your qualifications don't meet the criteria, what's your narrative, right? Find your story. Think about that, rehearse that, get clarity on, well, okay, what's my pitch? Why am I the right candidate then? What sets me apart? And demonstrating that you're passionate and you're hardworking, and maybe using the rest, you know, saying, look, I've done hard work in other kinds of positions. But the other side of the equation is maybe you do take that junior role, right? To this last question we were talking about, maybe you take a different role at a company. Make sure that you're not giving the impression that you're not going to be interested or you're not going to be invested in that job, because no one wants to hire someone who has their eyes completely set on something else. But then once you're in a company, right, and you want to get to somewhere, find other volunteer opportunities, reach out to the management of that team and say, hey, and like Sharee said, be open with your leadership. I want to do a good job at this, and my first and foremost priority is to be an A+ employee in the role that I've been hired for. And long term, I'm really passionate about this career path. So I'm wondering if we could allocate 10% or 5% even of my bandwidth to learning more in that space and being part of stretch projects, or being part of volunteer groups or whatever. And then reaching out to that department and saying, hey, is there any way for me to help? Is there any way for me to learn a little bit, to take a little bit of work off your plate? And maybe it's not going to be the most glamorous work, but at least you're showing that you want to be in that space. So finding other opportunities to, in my space, in diversity and inclusion, A lot of folks are passionate about this, and they start with employee resource groups. So a great way to, if you don't have DIBS experience, you can start by leading an ERG, an employee resource group, and demonstrating, hey, I'm building the skills and acumen to eventually be able to apply for that job down the line.
I love that, Miguel. That was so great. I think, you know, signing up for shadowing the department or role that you want to do, you know, offering to help with projects, that's all stuff that you can add to your resume or cover letter. That's another thing too. If you feel like you have more to tell about your story, put it on your cover letter. That's really what that's for, right? I can't guarantee all recruiters look at cover letters, but it is a way to get it out there. And maybe even your resume, do a little expert at the top, like, you know, I might not have all the experience, or, you know, add a little bit of your story to your resume too. But if you decide to take like maybe a more junior role, then just reach out to those people that you want to be one day and ask to help with projects and things like that. But I think also accepting that sometimes, like Miguel, you said it really great. Like, you know, if you're coming in and you're wanting to take on, you feel like you really want to do this director role, I'm just throwing a title out there. But you don't have the experience, you have to think about the company too. They're hiring a director level for a reason. We probably need that experience and expertise right then and there. So we don't always have that wiggle room to say, okay, we're going to give this person a chance to like prove themselves. So just be aware of that also, that just because you put out there that you want to do it and you feel like you can do it, doesn't mean it's always going to work with all parties involved, right?
The last thing I'd say, sorry,
go ahead.
I think this is actually really, this is something that many people miss that I think is really valuable, is maybe it's not the work stream that you want to be doing. So let's say you're in customer success and you really would like to get into marketing project management, right? And you reach out to the marketing team and you say, how can I help with projects, et cetera, et cetera? And they say, sorry, we just don't have those opportunities. Ask the people doing the job that you want, what does their day-to-day look like? What are the tasks and responsibilities that they do? And then you find out, oh, there's a lot of transferable skills here. So they do calendar management, they do budget management, they do project management, et cetera, et cetera. How can you maybe develop those skills in the department that you're in to become someone that can ultimately take that role? So maybe you're not doing the work, but you're doing the tasks.
Love that. Yeah, maybe you don't have this specific experience, but you already got the skills. So that's great. And that's great information to put in the cover letter too. I love that tip too, Sharee. So now I would love us to dive deeper into Procore's culture. Let me share my screen. So we shared ahead of time these questions with Sharee and Miguel because we wanted the community to have a little of an inside scoop of work at Procore. So we asked them if they could describe Procore's culture in one word, and they said malleable and evident. So I don't know if any of you would like to add any why to this choice. I think it's really interesting.
Sharee, you want to take this?
Yeah, I actually loved this because I get asked this all the time as a recruiter. It's maybe, you know, one of the main questions, why do you love Procore and what's the culture like? Honestly, it really does tie back to our three values, our three O's: ownership, openness, and optimism. And I chose evident because I've been here for 4.5 years, and still to this day, they are evident in everything we do, and literally from the top down. So I just like to tell people, you know, I have been a part of companies that were really big on their values, but it ended up being something that was just posted and kind of forgotten about. And I just don't feel like it's like that here. You can see it in just every presentation, every, you know, the way we interview. I mean, I help set up like interview kits and stuff, and we literally tie our values to every question. Those are thought about in every aspect. So I chose evident because I, even 4.5 years later, am still very impressed with how well these are, you know, put out there.
Love that. And so the second question that we shared was what was their favorite thing about working at Procore, and they shared helping to evolve the culture and bringing people to a company that they'll be proud to be a part of. And I think this is really cool and not something that happens all the day, you know, being passionate about the company that you work at, being proud of it, proud of their values, as Sharee was mentioning. And for the sake of time, because we're rounding out of time, I would like us to dive deeper into this last question. So if you have any tips for someone who is interviewing at Procore, what would they be? We have these answers here, but I would love us to plus to this next slide. So Sharee, if you would like to walk us through your top tip for someone who's interviewing at Procore and a little bit of the open roles that you have across the industry, the different categories.
Yeah, if you're interviewing for Procore, I would say I'm the one who wrote "Be Yourself." You're interviewing us just as much as we are interviewing you. And I always try and tell everybody, a lot of my family and friends come to me and ask, how do I interview? How do I prep? And I say, just be yourself. You're going to make yourself more nervous if you're sitting there prepping like crazy. Ask questions, make it a conversation. Don't make it I'm just going to sit here and answer the question and that's it. So be open, be yourself. And then we do have a lot of openings right now, 250. It's literally across every department. So I would say go to our job board and take a look at what's there. I mean, a ton of sales roles, ton of customer success. And then if you're on the engineering side, I know they have a lot also.
Amazing. Thank you. Miguel, anything that you'd like to add? Any tip that you'd like to share?
No, I think that covers it. Just say thank you for the time. And yeah, if you're interested in Procore, please reach out to us on LinkedIn, wherever. We'd love to connect and yeah, hope to speak with more of you soon.
Amazing. Thank you so much for jumping into this call, for prepping, for being here the whole hour engaged. Really appreciate all the knowledge that you shared. At least when I started my career, I know I never thought about this. You know, I never thought that I could be the owner of my own journey. So I really appreciate this conversation, and I'm sure our community does too. So thank you to our community for jumping in, for being the greatest audience of the world. And thank you, Procore, for making this conversation possible. So I'm dropping in the chat box the link to Procore's company page at Power to Fly. So you can check all the open roles, benefits. You will get alerts whenever there's a new event. So I would make sure, if I were you, to go and follow the company page. Nevertheless, you will get a link to the recording in the next following working days. So really hope you enjoyed this time. Thank you, Sharee and Miguel, again, for being here. Really appreciate you. So hope you all have a nice rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ciao.